Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 5.34, March of the Night Parade. We are back.
Ooh. Yes, last time on Aetheral Space, so Dragon and Serena were escaping Loss, who had, unleashed hell, and they were going to climb up to where...
Guardian entities, he just, vomited them up.
Yeah, and they were going to go up to Garth because, they were oh, Lily's guardian entity will be able to help us. But then Garth was actually get owned, and he revealed he knows how to use Aether, and he threw Ruth off the roof. And then you know what'll be funny? I just realized is if fucking because Serena and Dragon are climbing, do you think they'll just catch her as she's falling? Be oh hey, convenient. No, and then he overrode and used the good lady's guardian entity. I got a Kuro or something, the giant invisible elephant thing.
Well, no one said elephant.
That's just what I assumed. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. Now then, Garth said, rolling up his sleeves as he turned to face Lily and the good lady. Where were we? The good lady gaped at the shattered window, at the hole Ruth had just gone flying out from. What? She spluttered. What did you do to her? That's rather the wrong question, my dear, Garth said, dark blue aether running across his body as he took a step forward. After all, it was the fist of your guardian entity that sent her flying. I wouldn't worry about her anyway. My guardian entity told me she has a little trick for surviving long falls. She should be back right about... As if on cue, Ruth shot up into sight outside, her body surrounded by shattering silver armor. In a single moment, her claws and skeletal set reappeared. She kicked off a chunk of debris and went flying down again, like a ball being spiked by an invisible hand. This time, she struck the rooftop below hard, leaving a cloud of dust that engulfed and obscured her. Lily growled, coating her body with protective aether as she prepared to summon her own guardian entity, only to be interrupted as Garth's fist smashed into her face, shattering her nose and sending her flying into the wall. Holy shit. I'm just imagining, fucking... Anytime I hear shattering nose, I imagine the Steely Dan in JoJo.
Interrupting the transformation sequence.
Yeah. Brr, dur, dur, dur. The good lady screamed as she zoomed past. What if this was the last chapter? What if Aetheral Space ends, Garth just kills everyone?
He's the star of the new
He's
sequel.
so good. Yeah, he's the star of Holy Space or something. Lily growled, coding... Okay, only to be interrupted... Yeah. The good lady screamed as she zoomed past. Your guardian entity is slow to emerge, Garth said calmly, cracking his knuckles as he approached. If I interrupt you before you can fully summon it, you're helpless before me. She had a second before he reached her. Again, she tried to bring out her entity as quickly as he could. I assumed she could. But the boot that slammed in her gut was faster. She doubled over, clutching her stomach with her hands. But that only meant that Garth's next two kicks slammed right into her knuckles. Even through the pain, Lily could see something out of the corner of her eye. In the distance, through the broken window, something vast and invisible was moving. At first, it looked like a trick of the light, the tiniest rippling in the air through the rain. But the sounds of crunching stone and glass were unmistakable as it crawled insectoid after Ruth. Crawled insectoid? Is that what it was supposed to be?
Yeah.
Okay. Garth's boot struck again, this time catching Lily in the hip as she twisted her body to avoid the strike. The pain was excruciating, the pulses of agony from her face, stomach, and side competing for supremacy, only intensifying as they radiated out. She wouldn't go down like this. If she couldn't use her guardian entity, she had other ways to fight. In a flash of movement, she lashed her hand out, reaching for the dagger strapped to her side. Her movement was fast. Garth's, unfortunately, was faster. He stomped down on her hand with such force that she heard and felt the bones crunch, blood sticking to Garth's heel as he ground his boot further in. In a situation like that, it didn't matter how much pride you had. The scream escaped Lily's throat, filling the room as Garth stomped down again and again and again. Lily only had the dimmest awareness of what was happening now, the pain acting like a haze around her consciousness. The good lady was pulling at the back of Garth's robe, her futile strength trying to tear him away from his victim. The good lady squeezed her eyes shut. "If that thing's my guardian entity," she mumbled, "I command you! Stop! Stop attacking!" Garth answered without looking back. "It's useless. Entity override is infallible. Your guardian entity will continue following my command until I rescind it or the beast is destroyed." "Then rescind it!" The good lady thumped her small fists into Garth's back with all her strength. The Prester, for his part, didn't even seem to notice. He slammed his boot into Lily's stomach once again without so much as a glance backwards. "Get up," he growled, reaching down and picking Lily up by the hair. Even with gravity threatening to pull her scalp free, Lily didn't have the strength to do anything but hang there limply, twitching. She swung slightly like a pendulum as Garth clenched his fist, gathering aether in his knuckles. His face looked different now, patches of skin around his eyes and nose crusting over until they looked more like grey stone. Lily vaguely wondered if this was like what Dragon had, the way his eyes glowed when he was using aether. "You asked me to end this conflict, to make that realistic," Garth hissed. Wait, is Garth one of the stone soldiers? Is that what's being implied here?
No.
Ooh. Oh. "I'll do just that. Conflict ends when your enemy's dead. I'll demonstrate that now." Oh, I think I popped my jaw. Ow.
His violence through the chapter was so intense it got you as well.
Oh, do I sound normal?
Yeah.
Ugh. Bah, bah, bah.
God punched you through the screen.
Alright, I think I can do a little bit more and then I might have to popcorn. I'm like getting real tired.
Okay.
Ruth threw herself out of the crater in the moment before the invisible fist came down once again, sending shards of stone flying across the rooftop. Her skeletal set barely withstanding the hits it had already taken, she rolled into a ready position, eyes looking around for an enemy they couldn't see. She jumped. A moment later, she knew why. A colossal force swept through the spot she'd just been, the resultant air pressure stripping the tiles from the patch of roof behind. Her mind couldn't perceive this enemy, but her body could sense its presence. If that was the case, she was in a tough spot. So long as she didn't know what she was fighting, she couldn't go on the offensive. There was no way for her to know what parts of the enemy's unseen body were vitals to target. She threw herself to the ground. A clumsy swing passed over her head, the force of it almost sending her flying off all by itself. This enemy wasn't especially fast, but its strength was something to be wary of. Ruth guessed she'd only be able to take 2 or 3 hits from a monster like this, and she wasn't eager to test that. Still, she couldn't just keep dodging forever either. Garth had sent this thing after her to get her out of the way, and the fact that he had Aether meant he'd be a huge threat for Lily in close quarters. If she didn't deal with this threat quick, there was a good chance she wouldn't have any allies to go back to. Wait, isn't this Ruth moving around, not Lily?
Yeah.
You put a huge threat for Lily in close quarters.
Yeah.
Be a huge threat for... Oh, I see what you're saying. I got confused. She leapt to the side, but too slow. The invisible force just barely caught her, sending her smashing back down onto the roof. The metal taste of blood filled her mouth. Shit! Panic flaring in Ruth's mind, she moved to get up, to dodge the second blow she knew would be coming, but as her muscles flared in protest, she knew she was too late. She could hear the air rushing as an unseen fist came down. Gemini shotgun! The projectile, a chunk of stone debris, slammed into the invisible enemy's limb at incredible speeds, redirecting the blow so that it landed at the spot next to Ruth, rather than reducing her to a smear. Heart pumping crazily, she jumped back once, twice, doing her best to get out of this thing's range. The second time her feet came down, she found that Serena and Dragon were next to her. Dragon slung over Serena's shoulder like a bag of potatoes. She put him down. That's such a weird visual. Sorry. She held him down as gently as if he were a baby, ignoring the annoyed expression on his face. "Thanks for the save," Ruth grunted, cracking the joints in her neck as she stared down empty air. "Things didn't go as planned. There's an invisible enemy." Dragon winced as he looked down at the roof, doing his best to keep track of their opponent's position. Alright, I know there's not a dash, but I think I have to popcorn and I'm out of juice.
The vague indentations of massive hands were pressed down onto the roof wherever the thing moved, the rainwater filling them and making miniature ponds. Did the shape of the hands mean that the enemy was humanoid? There was no way of telling. For all they knew, it could just be a giant chicken with a pair of human hands. "It's bad on our end too," Dragon said. "We're being chased by a shitload of guardian entities. They'll be here any minute." Said Serena, looking back over her shoulder. "Mr. Dragon?" He ignored her, looking instead at Ruth. "We were hoping Lily could use her lightning to take them all out at once. Where is she?" "Up there." Ruth nodded towards the central spire of the cathedral, towering above. "She's fighting Garth, I think." "Mr. Dragon?" Serena said.
Let me guess, the Hell Horde is behind me, isn't it?
That shouldn't be too bad, Dragon mused, cupping his chin. "She's got Aether, and I know for a fact he hasn't got Akamanto with him right now." Ruth winced. "Garth's got Aether too. He surprised me with it. Of course he fucking does. If that's the case, we can't depend on Lily getting down here anytime soon. We'll need to..." Serena lost her patience. "Mr. Dragon!" she cried, grabbing him by the shoulders and whirling him around. "Just look! You don't need to worry anymore. They're not chasing us!" Dragon blinked, staring at the roof empty of any of the guardian entities he described. His eyes widened. Then slowly he lifted up his sleeve and sniffed it. "They were tracking us by scent," he muttered. The rain washed it away. Oh God. Serena pumped her fist. Isn't this great? Now we don't have to worry about being eaten. Dragon shot a wide-eyed look at Ruth, the rain making his pale hair cling to his face as he shook his head. That's not good, he continued, because if they're not going after us, what are they going after? Embarco fumbled with his bag as he entered the grounds of the cathedral, holding up a vain hand in an attempt to shield himself from the rain. The wet season was always so miserable in Corinth. He'd informed the city guard of the Prester's orders as he'd been directed, and had begun to mobilise, but Embarco honestly didn't see the need. If a rebel army was truly approaching, wouldn't they be able to see them coming? Behaving as if the enemy was going to just suddenly appear before them was, as far as he could see at least, just fruitless paranoia. Embarco paused a moment at the great doors of the building. Usually there'd be guards stationed here, checking the credentials of anyone who entered, but now those posts were vacant. The only sign of human presence was the spear carelessly discarded on the ground. Cold sweat ran down the back of his neck. If the guards were truly getting this lax, it would be him taking the blame without a doubt. He had the sort of face that people enjoyed holding to account. He stepped forward, ready to assume some righteous indignation, when something small, blue and furry rushed past him, squeaking insistently.
Sonic?
Embarco stepped out of the way, wincing as he noticed the slightest pain in his hand. He paused as he realised that the small creature had stopped too, on the bottom step of the cathedral entrance. In terms of appearance, it was like a bipedal blue mouse, and it was eating something, nibbling it insistently. Some chunk of meat, some chunk of...
I wonder.
Embarco slowly looked down at his hand. He looked at the bloody stump where his pinky finger had been only moments ago. He looked at the fingernail the rodent was so eagerly chewing on. He opened his mouth to cry out, but never finished, as the doors behind him burst open and a flood of screeching beasts washed over him. Embarco didn't die screaming, but only because they ate his vocal cords first. The horde spread out into the city beyond.
That scene very reminiscent of the ReZero Rabbit scene.
I was actually thinking of the JoJo scene with Mister's finger coming off.
Oh, really? Like 100%. Because that was like how it happened in ReZero 2. Like they ate the finger or the hand first, and then they just surrounded him. And instead of snow, it's like raining. Come on.
I didn't have it in mind,
so
I'll
well.
be honest, but
Go on YouTube. Look up Subaru gets eaten by not you. I'm talking to the viewers. Look up Subaru gets eaten by rabbits. That's what happened right now to Embarco. Enjoy, smile.
Endon lost pause his search as he felt the building shake. He'd been making his way through the dusty tombs of past Presters. It'd been a long shot, but he'd suspected that Aubreyshire and her rebel comrades could have been hiding down there before they struck. Something heavy and large was moving around on the outside of the cathedral. There was only one possibility, the good lady's guardian entity. That brat wasn't capable of commanding it, which meant that Garth must have used entity override. Well, that made things simpler. Garth hadn't been responding to his telepathic messages, so he'd already known the man was busy, but if he was faced with a threat dire enough to use Gashadukuro, he could be nobody but Lily Aubreyshire. He'd found his prey. Lowe's closed his eyes in concentration, ready to use the coordinates for Garth's most likely location to begin transport. But before he could do so, 3 long and thin lengths of string wrapped themselves around his body, binding him tight. His eyes shot open. "You look different," muttered Nail Manrin, the strings connecting to his shamisen. "But you're Garth's guardian entity, aren't you?"
I just realized it's kind of weird how every other guardian entity is like an animal thing, but except for the shamisen, which is clearly an object.
Well, there's reason for that. You may have caught it on the previous chapter.
What was it?
We mentioned that the first test case was a musical instrument.
Oh! I didn't even connect those dots. That's how stupid I am.
The regulator...
In my defense, though, I blame it on the time between readings. But that's a cool detail.
When I say the last one, the one we just read.
No, I know, but like we hadn't read a chapter with Nail for like several weeks.
Right, okay, yeah. So, the regulator looked distant himself, glowing red veins running along his bare chest and arms, and a dead look in his eyes. If Lost didn't know better, he'd think it was a corpse he was looking at. He couldn't allow trash like this to get in the way. Not now. "You owe to tell me where he is," Nail said. "Now." Anger flared through Loss's mind. He would not be commanded by a mere peon. "Listen closely, whelp," Loss opened with. Nail swung his instrument and slammed him into the ceiling. Sending rock and rubble raining down. Then with another grunt of effort, he smashed Lois into the floor, a cloud of debris swooping through the ruined tomb. "That's fine, I guess," Nail Mandarin muttered. "I'll just beat it out of you."
"Please, Prester Garth paid me in advance. I can give it all to you." Oh my god. I love it. Alright. Good chapter. You guys know the drill. Spread the word. Leave the reviews. Smile wide. But yeah, that was a good chapter. I think we're nearing the end of Arc 5. And Tan, you already saw me talk about this in the chapter, and I was like rating my favorite arcs, but I think this is probably the best one so far. And Time for Time brought up a good point. He said part of it was the scope. I mean, they are kind of like fighting a whole government, sure, but like the fact that it's a planet not within like this giant federation of like Supreme and UAP and all that, and that they have like a very specific focus, really gives time to develop. I feel like the characters have developed a lot. I feel like the plot's been interesting. My only concern is that I hope Lily and Nail or like other characters are important at some point in the future. It would be a shame, I think, if they disappeared after all the development. But either way, this is definitely the strongest arc so far. And I'm wondering, however, though, if you're going to finish it sooner, if this will kind of like drag on to Arc 3 lengths.
We are in
because
the
I'm not
final,
sure how
like chapters of this.
we are in the end game.
We're in the end game.
I'm very excited to see how you end it off then. But yeah, this has been a great arc, I think. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I was looking forward to this one. Like, it started off a little bit different than it's ended up. My initial idea was like, what if they crash landed into like a fantasy world? With like elves and shit.
But it kind of ended up being more like because that's how it felt in the beginning. Not a fantasy world, but it did feel more, not medieval, maybe kind of medievally. But then it sort of developed into like this whole like secret conspiracy type deal. And it almost feels more like a reviewing technology-wise of like our, maybe not exactly one-to-one, but it feels kind of like more like our world in present time, whereas the rest of Aetheral space feels so distant future.
Yeah, I got what you mean there. But I've enjoyed this chapter.
Right.
This arc. I'm really looking forward to next arc as well. I think you'll enjoy that as well.
Smile. I'm still waiting for for your self-published book to come out so I can buy it and read it at work.
Well, we'll see where that's always progressing. But
all right.
thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.